The rain hammered against the windows of Rosa's small restaurant like angry fists. She sat alone at table number 3, the same table where her grandmother used to count the day's earnings with a proud smile. But tonight, there was no smile. Only a crumpled piece of paper that would change everything. Final notice. The words seemed to glow red in the dim light. Rosa had read it 20 times, but the message never changed. She had 30 days to pay $12,000 or lose. The restaurant that had been her family's heart for 3 generations. The empty chairs around her told the whole story. Just 2 years ago, this place buzzed with life every evening. Families sharing plates of her grandmother's secret recipe tamales. Workers stopping by for strong coffee and fresh bread before their morning shifts. Children pressing their faces against the glass display case, choosing between colorful cookies shaped like butterflies and stars. Then the world stopped. The pandemic hit like a tornado, sweeping away her customers, her savings, and her dreams in a matter of months. The government loans helped for a while, but they weren't enough. Nothing was enough. Rosa picked up a photo from the table. Her grandmother standing proudly in front of the restaurant's original sign. Corazon Kitchen. The Heart Kitchen. Grandma always said food was love made visible. When people eat here, she used to say, they taste home. But now home was slipping away like sand through her fingers. The sound of shuffling footsteps outside caught her attention. Through the rain-streaked window, she saw a figure hunched against the cold. A man was carefully arranging pieces of cardboard against the side wall of her building. His movements were gentle, precise, like he was setting up a real home instead of a temporary shelter. Rosa's first thought was to call the police. Business owners weren't supposed to let homeless people camp near their buildings. It scared customers away. But as she reached for her phone, she noticed something that stopped her cold. A small figure emerged from behind the man. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old. She wore a bright yellow raincoat that was too big for her tiny frame. The sleeves hung down past her hands, and she had to push them up to carry a worn backpack covered in cartoon characters. The man knelt down to the girl's level, speaking to her in low, soothing tones. Rosa couldn't hear the words through the rain and glass, but she could see the love in his gestures. He wrapped a thin blanket around the child's shoulders, making sure it covered her completely before taking care of himself. Rosa's heart twisted. She had been so focused on her own problems that she had forgotten others were fighting battles, too. Here she was, warm and dry inside her restaurant, while a father and daughter were preparing to spend the night in a cardboard shelter. The little girl looked up at the restaurant's glowing sign, and for a moment, her eyes met Rosa's through the window. The child's face was thin but not defeated. She smiled and waved as if greeting a friend instead of a stranger watching from inside a warm building. That simple wave broke something inside Rosa's chest. She watched as the man pulled out a small camping stove, the kind backpackers use. He set it up carefully, protecting it from the rain with his own body. From a plastic bag, he pulled out a can of soup and a small pot. Every movement showed love and care. A father doing everything possible to take care of his child. Rosa found herself standing up, walking to the door. Her hand hesitated on the lock. What was she doing? She barely had enough money to keep the lights on. She couldn't afford to help anyone else, but the image of that little girl's wave wouldn't leave her mind. She opened the door and stepped into the cold rain. The man immediately stood up, putting himself between Rosa and his daughter. His eyes were tired but alert, ready to protect what mattered most to him. "Ma'am, I'm sorry," he said quickly. "We're not bothering anyone. We'll move if you want us to." Up close, Rosa could see he was younger than she first thought, maybe 35, with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of honest work. His clothes were clean but worn, patched in places but maintained with care. "It's going to be a cold night," Rosa heard herself saying. "Why don't you both come inside where it's warm?" The man's eyes widened with surprise. "That's very kind, but we don't want to be any trouble. We have everything we need here." Rosa looked at the cardboard shelter, then at the little girl who was trying to help her father with the camping stove. Her yellow raincoat was getting soaked, and she was shivering despite trying not to show it. "Please," Rosa said. "I insist." The man looked at his daughter, then back at Rosa. Something in Rosa's face must have convinced him because he nodded slowly. "Just for tonight, and we'll leave first thing in the morning." "What's your name?" Rosa asked as she led them inside. "I'm Carlos," the man said, "and this is my daughter, Lily." Lily looked around the restaurant with wide eyes, taking in the colorful decorations and the warm, spicy smells that still lingered in the air. "It smells like Christmas," she whispered. Rosa smiled for the first time in weeks. "My grandmother always said good food makes every day feel like a celebration." As Carlos and Lily settled at a table near the kitchen, Rosa began moving around with purpose. She heated up leftover rice and beans, warmed some tortillas, and made fresh coffee. Simple food, but prepared with the care her grandmother had taught her. While they ate, their stories began to unfold. Carlos had been a construction supervisor until his company went bankrupt 6 months ago. He had sold everything trying to keep his apartment, but eventually, the money ran out. Lily was in second grade at the local elementary school, and Carlos walked her there every morning, making sure she looked as normal as possible. "She doesn't know how bad things are," Carlos said quietly, while Lily used the restaurant's bathroom. "I tell her we're on an adventure, camping in the city. She thinks it's fun." Rosa felt tears threatening to fall. Here was a man facing his worst nightmare, yet still protecting his daughter's innocence. "Where do you shower? Where do you wash clothes?" Rosa asked. "There's a community center 6 blocks away. They let us use their facilities twice a week. The library's open most days, so Lily can do homework there. She's smart, getting straight A's despite everything." When Lily returned, she helped Rosa clear the table without being asked. She stacked plates carefully and wiped down surfaces with the serious concentration of a child trying to be helpful. "Thank you for dinner," Lily said politely. "Can I help? Wash dishes?" Rosa's heart melted completely. "Of course, sweetheart." As the three of them worked together in the small kitchen, something magical happened. For the first time in months, the restaurant felt alive again. There was laughter when Lily tried to reach the high shelf. There was warmth in the way Carlos naturally knew where things belonged. There was hope in the air, fragile but real. That night, Rosa set up makeshift beds in the restaurant's back office. As she listened to Carlos reading a story to Lily in the quiet darkness, she realized something important. She had been so focused on losing her restaurant that she had forgotten what restaurants were really for, bringing people together, creating moments of comfort and connection. Maybe, just maybe, saving her restaurant would start with saving this little family. Or maybe they would save each other. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside Corazon Kitchen, 3 hearts were beginning to heal. Rosa woke up to the sound of quiet voices coming from downstairs. For a moment, she forgot about her unexpected guests and panicked, thinking someone had broken into the restaurant. Then she remembered Carlos and Lily were sleeping in the back office. She checked her phone. 6:30 in the morning. The restaurant didn't open until 8, but someone was definitely moving around downstairs. Rosa quickly threw on her robe and hurried down to investigate. What she found made her stop in her tracks. Carlos was standing at the coffee machine, which had been broken for 3 weeks. Rosa had been too embarrassed to call a repair person because she couldn't afford to pay them, but somehow the machine was humming to life, filling the air with the rich smell of fresh coffee. "I hope you don't mind," Carlos said, looking worried when he saw her. "I couldn't sleep, so I thought I'd take a look at your coffee machine. It was just a clogged filter and some loose connections. Nothing major." Rosa stared at the machine like it was performing magic. "How did you know how to fix it?" "I used to work construction, but before that I went to technical school. Learned about electrical systems, plumbing, all kinds of repair work. When you're building houses, you have to understand how everything connects." Lily appeared from the bathroom, her hair neatly brushed and her school clothes clean. She had even made her makeshift bed in the office, folding the blankets Rosa had given them with military precision. "Good morning, Miss Rosa," Lily said politely. "Thank you for letting us stay." Dad made coffee and it smells really good. Rosa accepted a cup from Carlos and her eyes widened at the first sip. It was perfect. Rich and smooth. Better than any coffee she had made in months. "This is incredible," she said. "How did you make it taste so good?" Carlos smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him. The machine wasn't brewing at the right temperature. When the connections are loose, it can't heat the water properly. Now it's working like it should. As they sat together sharing coffee and leftover pastries, Rosa learned more about her guests. Carlos had been living in his car with Lily until it broke down 2 weeks ago. Since then, they had been moving from place to place, never staying anywhere long enough to cause trouble. "The hardest part isn't sleeping outside," Carlos said quietly, making sure Lily was busy with her coloring book. "It's keeping her routine normal. She needs to feel safe, to know that some things in her life are still the same." Rosa watched Lily carefully coloring a picture of a house with a big garden. The little girl hummed softly to herself, completely absorbed in her work. Despite everything she was going through, she seemed happy and well cared for. "Where is her mother?" Rosa asked gently. Carlos's face grew sad. "She died in a car accident 2 years ago. It's just been Lily and me since then. I promised myself I would never let anything happen to her, but..." He gestured helplessly around them. "You're doing an amazing job," Rosa said firmly. "Look at her. She's happy. She's healthy. She's smart. That doesn't happen by accident." At 7:30, Carlos began preparing to walk Lily to school. Rosa watched them get ready with the same careful routine they probably followed every morning. Carlos checked Lily's backpack, made sure her lunch was packed, and helped her put on her jacket. "I'll be back this afternoon to pick you up, okay?" he told his daughter. "Remember, if anyone asks where you live, you tell them we're staying with a friend." Lily nodded seriously. This was clearly something they had practiced. After they left, Rosa found herself alone in the restaurant again. But something was different. The coffee machine hummed quietly in the corner, filling the space with warmth and the promise of better days. She decided to make breakfast, even though she had no customers expected. As she cooked eggs and warmed tortillas, the front door chimed. Rosa looked up to see 3 construction workers in work clothes. "Are you open?" one of them asked. "We smelled coffee from outside, and honestly, we're desperate. The coffee shop down the street doesn't open until 9. Rosa hesitated. She wasn't officially open, and she only had enough food for a simple breakfast. But the men looked tired and hopeful. "Sure," she said. "Come in." The workers settled at a table, and Rosa served them fresh coffee, scrambled eggs, warm tortillas, and homemade salsa. She watched nervously as they took their first bites. "This is fantastic," one of them said. "This salsa, did you make it yourself?" "It's my grandmother's recipe," Rosa said, feeling a warm glow of pride. "We work construction all over the city," another worker said. "We've eaten at a lot of places, and this is special, really special." By the time they left, Rosa had earned $45 and received promises that they would be back the next morning. More importantly, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months, the joy of cooking for people who appreciated it. When Carlos returned at 3:30, he found Rosa experimenting with lunch recipes in the kitchen. "How was your day?" she asked. "I walked around looking for work, filled out applications at 6 different places. 2 of them said they might call." His voice was hopeful but realistic. "How was yours?" Rosa told him about the construction workers, about the compliments on her grandmother's salsa, about the feeling of the restaurant coming alive again. "That's wonderful," Carlos said genuinely. "You have something special here. People can taste the love in your food." Lily burst through the front door, her backpack bouncing as she ran to Rosa. "Miss Rosa, guess what? I got a gold star on my math test." She showed Rosa her test paper, marked with a bright gold sticker and 100% written in red ink. "I'm so proud of you," Rosa said, giving Lily a hug. "This calls for a celebration." She made hot chocolate for Lily and fresh coffee for Carlos. As they sat together, Lily began telling them about her day at school, about her friend who shared crayons with her, about the book they were reading in class. Carlos listened with the complete attention that only loving parents give their children. Rosa found herself drawn into their little family circle, feeling more connected to other people than she had in months. "Can I help with dinner?" Lily asked when she finished her story. "Of course," Rosa said. "Would you like to learn how to make my grandmother's rice?" Lily's eyes lit up. "Yes, please." As they cooked together, Rosa realized something important was happening. This wasn't just about giving Carlos and Lily a place to stay. They were giving her something too: purpose, connection, hope. When Carlos quietly fixed a wobbly table while they cooked, Rosa understood that they were building more than just temporary shelter. They were creating something that felt like family. That evening, as they shared a simple dinner of rice, beans, and fresh tortillas, Rosa made a decision that surprised even herself. "I know this arrangement was supposed to be temporary," she said, "but what if it wasn't? What if we helped each other for a while longer?" Carlos looked up, surprise and hope mixing in his expression. "I need help with the restaurant," Rosa continued. "You need a place to stay. Lily needs stability. Maybe we can figure this out together." Lily clapped her hands together. "Does that mean we get to stay in the kitchen place?" Rosa laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. "Yes, sweetheart. You get to stay in the kitchen place." Outside, the sun was setting over the city, painting the restaurant windows golden. Inside, 3 people who had been struggling alone were discovering that sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected places. 3 weeks had passed since Carlos and Lily moved into the restaurant, and Rosa couldn't remember the last time she had felt this alive. Every morning brought new surprises, new hope, and new customers who were starting to become like family. The construction workers had kept their promise. They came every morning at 7:30 sharp, bringing their co-workers with them. Word was spreading through the construction sites across the city about the little restaurant that served the best breakfast in town. "Rosa, you've got to expand your menu," said Tony, one of the regular construction workers. He was a big man with gentle eyes who always asked about Lily's school progress. "My wife keeps asking when you're going to serve dinner. She wants to bring the kids here." Rosa looked around the restaurant, which was buzzing with activity. Carlos moved smoothly between tables, refilling coffee cups and chatting with customers like he had been doing it for years. Lily sat in her usual corner booth, homework spread out in front of her, occasionally helping by showing new customers to their seats. "I don't know if we're ready for dinner service," Rosa said, wiping her hands on her apron. "We can barely keep up with breakfast and lunch." But even as she said it, Rosa's mind was racing with possibilities. The old dinner menu was still stored in her office drawer, her grandmother's recipes for enchiladas, mole chicken, and fresh tamales. Dishes that took time and love to prepare properly. After the lunch rush died down, Carlos found Rosa staring at the old menu cards, lost in memories. "Thinking about dinner?" he asked, sitting down across from her. "My grandmother used to serve dinner here every night until she was 85, Rosa said. People would come from all over the city for her Sunday tamales. But after she died, I never felt ready to try those recipes. They seemed too big, too important." Carlos picked up one of the recipe cards written in Rosa's grandmother's careful handwriting. Even though it was in Spanish, he could tell it was more than just instructions. It was love written down on paper. "Maybe you're ready now," he said gently. "You have help. You have customers who trust you. And you have something your grandmother would be proud of." That afternoon, while Lily worked on her reading homework, Rosa and Carlos experimented in the kitchen. They started with the simplest recipe, her grandmother's red enchilada sauce. Rosa had watched her grandmother make it hundreds of times, but she had never tried it herself. As the chilies roasted on the stove, filling the kitchen with smoky sweetness, Rosa felt her grandmother's presence in the room. Her hands seemed to know exactly what to do, even though she was nervous. "Taste this," she said, offering Carlos a spoonful of the sauce. His eyes widened. "Rosa, this is incredible. It's like sunshine and happiness mixed together." Lily looked up from her homework. "Can I try?" Rosa gave her a tiny taste, watching carefully for her reaction. Lily's face lit up with delight. It tastes like a hug, she said seriously, making both adults laugh. They spent the rest of the afternoon making a small batch of chicken enchiladas. When Tony and 2 other construction workers stopped by for afternoon coffee, the smell drew them straight to the kitchen. "What is that amazing smell?" Tony asked. "It's making my mouth water." "Just experimenting," Rosa said, but she was smiling. "Can we be your taste testers?" asked Mike, another regular customer. "I promise we'll give you honest opinions." Rosa looked at Carlos, who nodded encouragingly. They served small portions of the enchiladas, watching nervously as the men took their first bites. The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. "Rosa," Tony said slowly, "this is the best Mexican food I've ever eaten in my life, and I grew up in San Antonio." "You have to put this on the menu," Mike added. "My wife would drive across town for this." "How much would you charge for a full-size plate?" asked the third worker. Rosa's heart started racing. She hadn't even thought about pricing. This was just an experiment, a way to honor her grandmother's memory. I don't know," she stammered. "Whatever you charge, it's worth it," Tony said firmly. "You could charge restaurant prices for food this good." That evening, after Lily had gone to sleep in the back office, Rosa and Carlos sat at the front table planning. Rosa had pulled out her grandmother's entire recipe collection, dozens of cards written in fading ink, each one a treasure. "We could start small," Carlos suggested. "Maybe offer dinner 3 nights a week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, test the waters." "But I'd need more help," Rosa said. "These recipes take time. The mole sauce alone takes 4 hours to make properly." "I can help more," Carlos said. "I've been learning by watching you, and I'm getting faster with the prep work." Rosa looked at him carefully. Over the past weeks, she had watched Carlos transform from a desperate man into someone confident and capable. He moved through the kitchen like he belonged there, and customers genuinely enjoyed talking with him. "Carlos, can I ask you something personal?" He nodded. "Before construction, before the technical school, what did you want to be when you were young?" Carlos smiled, a distant look in his eyes. "I wanted to be a chef. My mother was an incredible cook, and I used to help her in the kitchen when I was Lily's age. But my father said cooking wasn't a real job for a man. He pushed me toward construction, said it was more stable. And now? Now I think maybe my father was wrong about what makes a job real. Working here, helping you, seeing customers smile when they taste your food. This feels more real than anything I've done in years." Rosa felt something click into place, like puzzle pieces finding their perfect fit. "What if we became partners?" she said suddenly. "Real partners. You help me expand the menu, handle customers, manage the day-to-day operations. I teach you my grandmother's recipes, we split the profits." Carlos stared at her. "Rosa, I can't ask you to do that. This is your family's restaurant. You're not asking, I'm offering. And maybe you and Lily are becoming family too." The next morning brought a surprise that changed everything. Rosa woke up to find a line of people waiting outside the restaurant. Not just their usual construction workers, but families, elderly couples, young professionals, people she had never seen before. "What's happening?" she asked Carlos, who was already dressed and looking out the window. "I think we're about to find out," he said. When they opened the doors, Tony was first in line, grinning widely. "Rosa, you're famous," he announced. "My wife posted about your enchiladas on her Facebook page last night. She has 3,000 friends, and apparently they all want to try your food." Rosa's hands started shaking. She looked at the crowd of expectant faces, then at Carlos, then at Lily, who was watching everything with wide, excited eyes. "We don't have enough food prepared for all these people," Rosa whispered to Carlos. "Then we'd better get cooking," he said, squeezing her shoulder. "Partners, right?" Rosa took a deep breath, looked at her grandmother's photo hanging on the wall, and felt strength flow through her. "Right," she said. "Let's get cooking." As they rushed into the kitchen to prepare for their biggest day yet, Rosa realized that Saving her restaurant hadn't been about finding the perfect business plan or the right amount of money. It had been about finding the right people to share the dream with. Outside, the line continued to grow, but inside, Corazon Kitchen, 3 hearts were ready for whatever came next. The day that started with a line of hungry customers outside Corazon Kitchen turned into the most chaotic and wonderful day Rosa had ever experienced. By noon, they had served more people than they usually saw in a week. But with success came problems Rosa hadn't expected. "We're running out of everything," Carlos whispered to her as he rushed past with a tray of empty plates. "Rice, beans, tortillas, even the coffee is getting low." Rosa looked around the packed restaurant. Every table was full, and there were still people waiting outside. Lily had abandoned her homework corner to help wherever she could, filling water glasses and clearing tables with the serious concentration of someone on an important mission. "What do we do?" Rosa asked, feeling panic start to rise in her chest. "We figure it out," Carlos said firmly. Together, he grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. "I'm going to the market. Make a list of everything we need. I'll be back in 30 minutes. As Carlos left, Rosa realized she was facing her biggest test yet. The restaurant was full of people who had come because of word-of-mouth recommendations. If she disappointed them now, if the food ran out or the service fell apart, they might never come back. But something amazing happened instead. The customers began helping each other. Tony, the construction worker who had become their biggest supporter, stood up and addressed the room. "Folks, this is a small family restaurant having their best day ever," he announced in his loud, friendly voice. "Rosa and Carlos are doing their best to feed all of us, but they need a little patience. How about we help them out?" Without being asked, customers began bussing their own tables. A woman named Patricia, who came in with her teenage daughter, started refilling coffee cups. An elderly man named Frank began taking orders and writing them down on napkins. "I used to be a waiter 50 years ago," Frank explained to Rosa with a wink. "Still remember how to do it." When Carlos returned from the market, his arms loaded with grocery bags, he stopped in amazement at the scene inside. The restaurant was still packed, but instead of chaos, there was a sense of community Rosa had never seen before. "What happened here?" he asked. "Family happened," said Patricia, the woman who had been helping with coffee. "This place feels like home. When your family needs help, you help." Over the next few hours, Rosa and Carlos cooked non-stop while their customers pitched in wherever they could. Lily became the unofficial hostess, showing people to tables and making sure everyone felt welcome. Her bright smile and polite manner charmed everyone she met. "That little girl is special," Rosa heard one customer tell another. "Look how she takes care of everyone. Her parents are raising her right." Rosa's heart swelled with pride, not just for Lily, but for Carlos. Despite everything they had been through, he had raised an incredible daughter. As the day wound down, Rosa realized they had served over 200 people, more than triple their usual number. But more importantly, they had created something magical. The restaurant buzzed with conversation, laughter, and the kind of warmth that only comes when strangers become friends. That evening, after the last customer left, Rosa, Carlos, and Lily sat exhausted but happy at their usual table. The cash register held more money than Rosa had seen in months. "We did it," Carlos said, looking amazed. "We actually did it." "People loved the food," Rosa said. "But more than that, they loved being here. They loved each other." Lily, who was coloring again after her busy day as a hostess, looked up with tired but bright eyes. "Miss Rosa, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. Are we a real family now? Because it feels like we are." Rosa felt tears spring to her eyes. Before she could answer, Carlos spoke softly. "Lily, family isn't just about sharing the same last name. It's about taking care of each other, supporting each other, and choosing to stick together even when things get hard." "So yes," Rosa added, reaching over to squeeze Lily's hand. "We're a real family." But their celebration was interrupted by a knock on the door. Through the glass, Rosa saw a woman in a business suit holding a clipboard. "We're closed," Rosa called out, but the woman knocked again, more insistently. Carlos went to the door and spoke with the woman briefly before letting her in. She looked around the restaurant with sharp, evaluating eyes. "I'm Janet Murphy from the City Health Department," she announced. "We received a complaint about overcrowding and unauthorized food service modifications." Rosa's blood ran cold. "A complaint? Someone reported that you're operating beyond your permitted capacity and that you have unlicensed individuals handling food preparation." Janet's eyes fell on Carlos and then on Lily. "Is that man employed here? Do you have a business license for him? And why is that child in the food service area?" Rosa's mind raced. Carlos wasn't officially employed anywhere. He couldn't be without a permanent address. And Lily had been helping all day, something that might violate child labor laws. "I can explain," Rosa began, but Janet held up her hand. "I need to see all your permits, employee records, and health certificates. If everything isn't in perfect order, I'll have to shut you down immediately." Carlos stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'm not officially employed here. I'm just helping a friend." "That's even worse," Janet said, making notes on her clipboard. "Unlicensed. Food handlers are a serious violation." Rosa felt her world starting to crumble again. Just when everything was going right, just when she had found her family and her purpose, it was all being threatened by paperwork and regulations. But then something unexpected happened. The door opened, and Tony walked in, followed by Patricia, Frank, and a dozen other customers from earlier in the day. "Excuse me," Tony said politely to Janet. "Are you the health inspector?" "I am. And you are?" "I'm Tony Ramirez, president of Local 47 Construction Union. These are some of my members and friends. We heard there might be some trouble here tonight." Patricia stepped forward. "I'm Patricia Williams. I'm a lawyer, and I've been coming to this restaurant for 3 weeks. I've never seen food handling or cleanliness standards higher than what Rosa maintains here." Frank cleared his throat. "I'm Frank Chen, retired restaurant owner. I ran 3 successful restaurants for 40 years. This place is run better than most established restaurants I've seen." Janet looked confused and slightly overwhelmed. "I still need to see the proper documentation." "And you will," said a new voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see a tall man in an expensive suit walking in. "I'm Robert Martinez, attorney. Rosa called me about an hour ago." Rosa looked confused. She hadn't called any attorney. Robert winked at her. "Actually, Patricia called me. She thought you might need legal help with your expansion plans." He turned to Janet with a professional smile. "I have all the paperwork you need right here. Business licenses, health permits, employee documentation, everything properly filed with the city as of this afternoon." Rosa stared at him in amazement. "But how?" "Community," Patricia said simply. "When word got out that you might have problems, people started making phone calls. Robert handled the legal work. The union helped with the paperwork. Frank called in some favors with his old contacts at the health department." Tony grinned. "Nobody messes with our restaurant." Janet looked through the papers Robert handed her, her stern expression gradually softening. "Everything appears to be in order," she said finally. "Though I will need to schedule a proper inspection next week." "Of course," Rosa said, her voice barely above a whisper. After Janet left, Rosa looked around at all the people who had stayed to help her, people who had been strangers just a few weeks ago. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you all do this?" Frank smiled. "Because you gave us more than just good food, Rosa. You gave us a place to belong." The week following the health department visit passed in a blur of preparation and nervous energy. Robert, the lawyer who had appeared like a guardian angel, worked tirelessly to make sure every piece of paperwork was perfect. Carlos officially became Rosa's business partner, and with Tony's help from the construction union, they fast-tracked his work permits. But the real surprise came 3 days before the scheduled health inspection. Rosa was in the kitchen preparing for the breakfast. Rush, when Lily came running in with excitement written all over her face. Miss Rosa, there's a man outside with a big camera, and he says he wants to talk to you." Rosa wiped her hands on her apron and walked to the front window. Sure enough, a man with professional camera equipment was setting up outside the restaurant. Next to him stood a woman holding a microphone with the local news station's logo. Carlos joined Rosa at the window. "What do you think they want?" Before Rosa could answer, the reporter knocked on the door. Rosa hesitated, then decided to face whatever this was head-on. "Good morning," the reporter said with a bright smile. "I'm Jessica Chen from Channel 7 News. We heard about your incredible story, how a struggling restaurant owner opened her doors to a homeless family, and how the community rallied to save the business. We'd love to feature your story on our morning show." Rosa felt her knees go weak. "On television?" "The story has been spreading all over social media," Jessica explained. "Someone posted about what happened with the health department, and it's gone viral. People are calling it the most heartwarming community story of the year." Within an hour, Corazon Kitchen was buzzing with activity. The news crew set up their equipment while customers continued to flow in and out. Jessica interviewed Rosa, Carlos, and even Lily, who charmed everyone with her honest answers about their adventure and how much she loved helping in the restaurant. "What's the most important thing you've learned?" Jessica asked Rosa during the interview. Rosa thought, for a moment, looking around at the restaurant filled with people who had become like family. "I learned that when you open your heart to help others, you end up helping yourself. I thought I was just giving Carlos and Lily a place to stay, but they gave me so much more. They gave me hope, purpose, and a real family." Tony appeared on camera too, along with Patricia and Frank, each explaining how the restaurant had become the heart of their community. "This isn't just about good food," Frank said, his eyes twinkling. "It's about good people taking care of each other. That's rare these days." The segment aired that evening during prime time. Rosa, Carlos, and Lily watched it together in the restaurant after closing, sharing a dinner of Rosa's grandmother's tamales, a recipe she had finally felt brave enough to try. "Look, there I am." Lily pointed excitedly at the screen. "I look like a real TV star." But the real shock came the next morning. Rosa arrived at the restaurant to find a line of people stretching around the block. Not just locals, but families who had driven from across the state after seeing the news story. Tour buses were parked nearby, and people were taking selfies in front of the restaurant's hand-painted sign. "This is crazy," Carlos said, staring at the crowd. Inside the restaurant, the phone rang constantly. Reporters from other cities wanted interviews. Food bloggers requested reservations. A publisher called asking if Rosa would consider writing a cookbook featuring her grandmother's recipes. But the most important call came just before lunch. "Rosa, this is Michael Torres from the Small Business Development Center." The voice on, the phone said. "We saw your story on the news. We have a proposition for you." An hour later, Michael sat at their usual table, explaining an opportunity that seemed too good to be true. "A group of local investors wants to help you expand," said. "They're offering to help you open a second location, maybe even franchise the concept. But more importantly, they want to create a program based on your model. Restaurants that serve as community centers and provide opportunities for people who need a second chance." Rosa looked at Carlos, who was listening intently while Lily colored at the next table. "What does that mean exactly?" Carlos asked. "It means other restaurants could follow your example. Hire people who need stable work, partner with homeless services, create spaces where communities can come together. You've proven it works." Rosa felt overwhelmed. 6 months ago, she was facing bankruptcy and sleeping alone above an empty restaurant. Now she was being offered the chance to expand across the city. "I need to think about this," she said. That evening, after the crowds had gone home and the restaurant was quiet again, Rosa sat with Carlos and Lily, trying to process everything that had happened. "Are we going to be famous?" Lily asked, still excited about being on television. "Maybe a little bit," Rosa laughed. "How do you feel about that?" "I think it's good," Lily said seriously. "Now more people will know about our family restaurant, and maybe other kids who don't have homes will find families too." Carlos smiled at his daughter's wisdom. "What do you think, Rosa, about the expansion offer?" Rosa looked around the restaurant, at the photos of her grandmother on the walls, at the tables where she had watched Carlos and Lily transform from strangers into family, at the kitchen where they had cooked together and built something beautiful. "I think," she said slowly, "that my grandmother always said the best recipes are meant to be shared. Maybe it's time to share this recipe for community." 3 months later, Rosa stood in front of the second Corazon Kitchen location, this one in a neighborhood across town. Carlos managed the original restaurant while she focused on training new managers and developing the community partnership program. The model was simple: restaurants that served great food while providing opportunities for people who needed a fresh start. Each location partnered with local homeless services, job training programs, and community organizations. But the real magic happened in the details. Former homeless individuals worked alongside culinary school graduates. Community volunteers helped during busy periods. Local schools sent students for after-school homework programs. Lily, now 8 and more confident than ever, had become something of a celebrity herself. She gave tours to visiting reporters and explained to other children how restaurants could be places where everyone belonged. The most important ingredient, she would tell visitors with the seriousness of an experienced chef, is making people feel at home. The program grew beyond anyone's expectations. Within a year, 12 restaurants across the state had adopted the Corazon Kitchen model. Rosa found herself traveling to speak at conferences about community-based business models, but her favorite moments were still the quiet mornings in the original restaurant, sharing coffee with Carlos while Lily did her homework at table number 3, the same table where Rosa had once sat alone, reading her eviction notice. "Do you think your grandmother would be proud?" Carlos asked one morning. Rosa looked at the photo on the wall, her grandmother's smiling face watching over the bustling restaurant filled with laughter, conversation, and the sound of families sharing meals together. "I think she'd say we finally figured out what she meant," Rosa said. When she said food was love made visible, she didn't just mean the cooking. She meant this: the community, the caring, the way people take care of each other. Lily looked up from her math homework. "And the way strangers become family." "Especially that," Rosa agreed, pulling Lily into a hug. Outside, the morning light streamed through the windows of Corazon Kitchen, illuminating a place where hunger was fed, hearts were healed, and the simple act of opening a door had changed everything for 3 people who discovered that sometimes the family you choose is the family you need most.